Hello and welcome again to the Sleepin It Real podcast. I'm your host, Seth Davis, and I'm delighted to be joined today by my colleague at Sleepably, pediatric sleep consultant Sara Nudd. Sara is a rock star who works with parents to help their children sleep better, and she has lots of great experience with improving families' overall well-being and helping kids to finally get the rest they deserve. So, Sara, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Well, thanks, Seth. That was a very kind introduction. I'm happy
Sure.
to be here.
So I often get asked myself, what is a sleep coach? I'm an adult sleep coach. But would you like to describe what a pediatric sleep consultant is and what services that you offer to families?
Absolutely. So I think one of our biggest roles, right, as sleep consultants is we really just help to build healthy and sustainable sleep habits for families, for people, for babies, for children. So it's really just kind of identifying where families are struggling and, kind of like what modifications that we need to make in order for them to finally get the sleep that they've been either missing out on, or even like some families that I work with, right? Like, they'll tell me like, "Oh, my 5-year-old never slept." And so like 5 years without sleep, it is a long time to have some like interrupted sleep. So, it just kind of depends on, what the family's goals are and, kind of how we support, them to find that sleep.
Sure. Okay. And what ages do you tend to work with?
So I will work from newborn really through age 12. And so really just again, I mean, the sleep issues for that whole range, right, are so different. For like your infants, obviously it's gonna be, kind of like finding that sweet sleep spot with like naps and wake windows and overnight wakes and feeds and all of that. And then your toddlers and preschoolers, a lot of that is like bedtime resistance and middle of the night wakings and kind of like a lot of those kids who will have kind of let's see where they need mom or dad or someone in order to fall asleep or stay asleep. So kind of working on that. And then your school age kiddos really it kind of depends, right? Sometimes we will have like bedtime resistance. Sometimes we'll have like middle of the night wake issues. Sometimes we'll just have early risers, right? Where they are just consistently waking up at like 4 in the morning, which is way too early. But they are wide awake and ready to start the day, but nobody else is. So it's really just kind of figuring out what is like the root cause of these sleep issues. What is an appropriate expectation? Sometimes I'll work with families, right, who let's go with like a 4-month-old baby. And the expectation going into it is, that they should be like sleeping all through the night, no feeds, no wakes. And sometimes, kind of just depending on where the baby's at as far as like weight gain, sometimes that just may not be a realistic expectation. So sometimes it's also just kind of supporting the family's expectation of what's like normal and what should be like happening where the baby's at developmentally. So it just all kind of runs the gamut there for reals.
Sure. And that's what kind of amazes me about what you do is that, you are able to segment these different age groups and kind of, formulate plans for each age group. And I know that, with those kids who are, in the 5 to 12-year-old age range, there's just not a lot of support out there for them. There's a lot of, baby and toddler sleep support, but not a lot out there for 5 to 12-year-olds. So I think it's great that you're able to offer something for those kids as well, because I know a lot of those parents, they kind of struggle and what do we even do about this? What is there? So I'm glad that you're out there helping with that.
And I think I found too, like a lot of those parents and families just feel really alone and isolated. And I feel like there's a lot of shame around more wakeful sleep patterns with older kids. Like you said, right? It's pretty like normal. There's so many like support things and literature and like social media support and websites and blogs for like baby sleep and toddler sleep. But for these school age kiddos who are struggling, it's super hard for the parents and for the kiddos, right? Because they are able to verbalize and actualize that they're having issues with sleep, and the bigger the kiddos, it's super cool, right? Because they are able to rationalize. I'm having sleep troubles. I'm frustrated with myself. My parents are frustrated with me, and then we're able to kind of get their buy into the program, and we can see that transformation, right? Where like they They start out just having like horrible sleep issues. They're frustrated. And then as we progress through the program, then the bigger kiddos are able to verbalize and be like, "Oh my God, I am sleeping." And like they are just as excited about their success as I am. In the parents, obviously, too. But yeah, I love working with that population, just to offer them like the support that they need, the coaching that they need, and to see everyone finally sleeping. It's awesome. I love what I do.
Okay, I love that. It's always nice to have rewarding outcomes when you work with people and just kind of feel that feeling of you've changed, you made a change in this person's life. And especially for kids, that you're teaching them skills, you're teaching them things that they might keep with them for the rest of their lives so that they have these tools to, always rest well and growth and development when they're younger and then when they're older to kind of maintain and protect their sleep. So yeah, it's a big gift you're giving them.
And I tell you what, there's like a pretty cool ripple effect too. So for example, right now I'm working with a family. It's a 7-year-old who has had a pretty, kind of long history of wakeful sleeping patterns. She's able to fall asleep pretty efficiently, at bedtime. But then consistently at the same time every night, she comes into her parents' room. She worm shares with her younger sibling, and now that we're about 3 weeks in, she's actually teaching and kind of coaching her younger brother, right? She's like, "Well, I'm doing this, and you should try this, and, like, this isn't this cool?" And so it's super cool to see that ripple effect that she is not only, like, kinda learning these skills for herself, but she's also teaching her younger brother. It's super cute. I love it.
That's amazing. I can only imagine how if the parents feel to see that too, where it's seeing the whole trickle down effect.
Absolutely. And I think, as the kids get older, right? I think if parents were to have, just like they wake up in the morning and they've got, like their 5-year-old or their toddler, kind of like laying either like at bedside, on the floor, near them, no big deal, right? But it's when the kiddos need the parent to like either return them to their bed or to do, like a song or a back scratch or a back rub or to hold hands or, kind of just like whatever that's kind of support of intervention in order to support their kiddo to fall back asleep. But that can also be super disruptive for the parent's sleep. And like, kind of just like that cohesive, pattern for, let's say, like couples and partners. It's can be super challenging. So it's rewarding in all the aspects, right? For the kids and for the families and for mom and dad and the caregivers themselves. So pretty
Sure. Yeah, and just to expand on that, I've seen some of the reviews, the online reviews that people have given you after working with you, and just some of the comments about, we finally have our date nights back, or we're finally able to connect as a couple again. So, yeah, the rewards are not just for the kids who are sleeping well, but also for, as you said, the caregivers, the adults. And coming from someone who has two children myself, I know that when they're not sleeping well or when things are going on, it's easy to just lose that time to, lose your me time. So the time to unwind in the evening, the time to get your own sleep and rest, but also for, to connect with your partner, which is also very important. And just everything feels more stressful when you're disconnected and don't have me time.
Yep. And I think it's something that has been applicable really for all the age groups, right? Is sometimes, well, it's pretty common actually. Each parent will have their own routine as far as, going in to address, let's say, like in honestly, all the age groups, like babies, toddlers, preschoolers, school age kiddos. Each parent will have their own intervention for going in to help a wakeful kid, right? And then a lot of the times, both caregivers are on the different pages, right? They may be in the same book, but they're in different pages. And so then, there's become some confusion on expectations for the kiddo when they do wake up, right? Am I going to get mom who's going to, do fill in the blank? Or am I going to get dad who's going to do fill in the blank? And then what happens, right? No matter the age group, is the child will verbalize that their expectations are not being met by whomever and whatever, right? And then you also get into this like cycle, right, where you have more wakeful sleep patterns and more frustrated babies, children, parents. And so one of the cool things that I love to do is just to get everyone on the same page, right? So I really encourage both caregivers, or even if you have three caregivers, if you have a nanny or a grandparent in the house, or throughout the day, I super encourage everyone, when you have a wakeful kiddo, we're going to do the same exact steps, so that no matter what, if it's a nap time wake or a middle of the night wake, that baby or child knows exactly what to expect. It's going to be very predictable, very boring. And then a lot of the times, once we get everybody on the same page, we start to see pretty efficient kind of changes that happen. So it's pretty cool.
That makes total sense. And I was, as you were saying that, I was thinking that when I work with adults, one of the words that I use most commonly is consistency. With consistency with with your routines, with your schedules, with this, that the more consistent we have, the more your body knows what's going on, the more just everything gets easier with consistency, I feel like. So it makes sense that you're kind of preaching that to the parents as well and to caregivers.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. It's a frequent preach. I think too, and I'm just speaking from experience on this one. So we have four kiddos, and they have quite a bit of an age range, but just in my personal experience, I've found, it's 2 a.m. and your kiddo is waking for whatever reason. You are exhausted, right? So like your fuse and like your patience meter, right, is gone. And so you're frustrated when you do go in to address like your wakeful child, again, no matter what age. One of my biggest things, in addition to consistency, that I advise parents and families is just to go in as like businesslike and monotone, no affect whatsoever. You're going in to, kind of like offer that child comfort and love and reassurance, but in the most business monotone, like gray affect that you can. Because we really, obviously, like we don't want to, offer kind of like any positive reinforcement for that 2 a.m. wake, right? But we also don't want to negatively reinforce it, right? If you go in like blending guns a blazing and just all fired up and annoyed and grumpy, that's also going to be more wakeful for your child. A few, gosh, maybe like 2 years ago, I had a client who, and everyone is going with this with what they know, right? Like no one ever, like tries to be more wakeful for their child. But I started working with a family who, when I think he was a preschooler, so he was like older. When the child would wake, instead of offering that like very gray affect, right? They would go in with water guns to like shoot like water under the child. Again, like not harmful,
Mhm.
because like that's what they had used with like their pets, as far as, kind of trying to correct that negative behavior. However, like the water gun squirt was more wakeful to the child. And so we started out with just being very like gray affect and very boring when going in to address those sleep issues.
Okay. And as you're talking with this about this, it kind of, I think, kind of talking about the value of a pediatric sleep consultant is partly, it's probably partly um, teaching people these things that might be kind of counterintuitive to them. So, normally you might react by going in grumpy, like you said, or by just being overly positive reinforcing. And so those things, they might be what you know naturally, but they could kind of further the problem. But also, we probably have learned a lot of things from perhaps our parents or from the, internet forums or things that are also kind of these kind of misperceptions that are not going to be very helpful either, like water guns and things that sound like they could be useful but might actually be making the problem worse. So it's kind of probably kind of coaching people on those and giving them this path. Uh,
Absolutely. And then just going into it too, right? Knowing that everyone's just trying to do their best and there's no shame in this, right? Like, everyone has like at the beginning, right? You're just trying to survive. You are just trying to like get your child to sleep so that you can sleep, so that you can be your best parent tomorrow or your best version of self, whether it's, if you're a stay-at-home mom, whether you're working, whether, whatever it is that you're doing during the day, you want to be at 100% capacity, and the frustration occurs when like someone or something is preventing you from doing that, right? And so it's all just been survival up until, that point. And then, right, let's turn that and let's flip that script and let's get, the kiddo back to sleeping so that you can sleep too. It's there's been just a variety of, I think, interventions and a variety of habits, whether like, I don't want to say bad habit, right? But a habit that hasn't been contributing to sustainable sleep that we then began to kind of like modify and tweak those interventions as we work through the program. One thing that's super important, and when I initially work with clients, I kind of feel bad about asking about this, but I will ask the log every single night in an interactive sleep log, so that I can see like what interventions are being used, what's working, what's not working, on the items that aren't working right. Let's figure out how we can tweak that intervention so that it fits with what the family's goals are and it fits with the kiddo, right? Some kiddos will just not respond or respond poorly to, an intervention, whereas other kiddos are like, yeah, I love this.
Mhm.
So it just really depends on, the family's like, goals and what works for them versus like what may work for others. Wouldn't it be amazing if there was like a one size fits all thing and we could just be like, all right, follow these steps ABC and everybody will sleep. But it's not like that. So
No, that would be great. I think we'd probably be out of a job if that were the case. But but yeah, everybody is, kids are different, adults are different, family dynamics are different. So it's yeah, so that's part of the challenge is creating this plan for people and then kind of modifying it as you go to just make it fit into their particular lifestyles. So I found that with adults as well.
I just wrapped up with another school age family, but a lot of what we worked on for them was sleep hygiene. And I feel like sleep hygiene is like that term is such a buzz right now, right? But really, even for school age kiddos, like it is for adults, it's super important to kind of create that relaxing end of day routine so that your body is able to cool, right? In temperature and in energy. And so even for school age kiddos, really even for toddlers also, kind of creating those healthy sleep hygiene habits are important from the beginning.
Mhm.
Uh, and so do you find that like with adults, what is like your secret sauce for adults? Do you feel like it's sleep hygiene or
No, so when well, so it depends. It depends on what the person's dealing with. If they're dealing with sleep issue, like severe sleep issues, then sleep hygiene is usually not enough to solve. It's usually when I'm working with those people, we'll start out with kind of diving deeper and then sleep hygiene will come later on because it's just not the first priority. But if it is somebody who's just, they sleep okay, but they're just looking to optimize their sleep, then that's sleep hygiene. We can dive in and see, okay, let's make these tweaks and that should improve it. But for people who are dealing with anxiety and stress and things like that, then simple sleep hygiene is usually not kind of it's not the overall solution that we're going for.
it's not the secret sauce?
Yeah. But for kids who probably, many of them are not dealing with stress or anxiety or, uh, you know, or just all these bad, things that adults have accumulated over the years, then for a lot of kids, I imagine the sleep hygiene is pretty, it can solve a lot of those smaller issues.
A lot of it, you bet, is routine, um, for sure. Routine, expectations, consistency, and in the morning, oh my gosh, so much value, right? And, like, immediate and I think this goes for all of us, right? Immediate exposure to natural light. I think in the winter, it can be tough just, like, with different, like, sun exposure locations, right? But, I encourage all of my clients, whether it's, like, newborn through school age, upon waking, if it's after, like that identified, it's okay to wake time. Absolutely immediate exposure to natural light if we can. So that's certainly important in helping to kind of support the circadian rhythm and just overall routine. So that helps for all of us.
I agree. Yep. Everybody could benefit from that. What, let's see. So to step back, we haven't officially kind of gotten your background and, what made you interested in becoming a pediatric sleep consultant. So tell us a little about you and about your, how you got to this point and your background and everything.
Absolutely. So I've been a nurse, a pediatric nurse, peds only, right? Since 2005. So that puts us at almost 18 years. And I feel so old saying that. But But over the last 18 years, I worked in pediatrics only, really supporting families, caring for, like newborn through 25. Because really, we all know, right? Like even if you're 18, you're not a true adult yet, right?
Sure.
And so yeah, my career has been with pediatrics. I worked in a college health setting as well, and then for the last 10 plus years, I've been working for a children's hospital organization here in Colorado. And then goodness, what, Seth, like 3 years ago, perhaps
So, yeah.
I had the honor to join you and Rebecca in the sleep coaching journey, and goodness, it's been, like, so much fun. And so I took a few certification classes, just to really dial in on, sleep and how to, like, support parents and kinda to learn those evidence-based methods and see kinda, like, learn more about what doesn't work and what does work. And then we started, goodness, about 3 years ago, I feel like Rebecca and I did. We launched our offer, and we've been kinda helping folks since then. And then about a year ago, I took a step back just to kind of, like, reflect on what I was doing, and it felt like a lot of what I was doing as far as, like, working with parents, and primarily moms, right, was really helping to kind of, like, coach them, in a few areas, right? But a lot of what I noticed with like the moms of kids who were 2 and younger were also undergoing a lot of like postpartum mood disorders, whether that was like anxiety, depression, kind of any combination. And so I really started to dig in to like perinatal mood disorders. And then in that kind of like rabbit hole that I found myself going into, right? I then became aware of the fact that a lot of what I was doing was like a lot of like counseling and support for these parents. And so I then went or I began like my NP journey. So I'm currently a year out from earning my psychiatry mental health nurse practitioner degree. And I really want to focus on just supporting kind of that perinatal population. So the perinatal population, for those of you that don't know, is really kind of like the time of pregnancy through the first year after delivery. Now the research is difficult for that because some will define postpartum as like the first 6 weeks. Some will say the first 6 months, and then some will say the first year. So I'm actually going through the first 2 years because there's so many things that the parents, are going through during that first, 0 to 2 years following delivery. That there's so many changes and transitions, for both moms and dads. Don't know, I feel like I told you about this, Seth, but there was a recent study, that was published maybe within the last 6 months, I think, that dads also undergo like a lot of mood disorders following the birth of their children, but there's very, very little support there. They see, like the trauma that their wife goes through, just having that extra kind of like mental load and stress and anxiety of now having like a new person, kind of involved in the mix, no matter like if you already have kids, doesn't really matter, right? It adds on an extra level of complexity and there's not a lot of support. So once I started going down that rabbit hole, I was like, oh my gosh, I really want to learn what all I can do to support these families. I've been supporting these families, for like now almost 2 decades.
Mhm.
And so, I really am kind of trying to transition from offering more like physical help in my role as a nurse to more holistic, I suppose. So offering those like mental health components as well, because it's goodness, the need is there and families are really struggling right now, especially like post COVID
Mhm.
dig out. And so that's kind of how I got started with that. I'm super excited. I've learned so much. But yeah, I'm excited for 2024, my
Mm.
last year here in school. So I'll
Yeah.
be excited.
Well, we'll celebrate when you graduate. But yeah, so you do have a very in-depth background, and it's cool that you are kind of transitioning into just adding this extra big skill set to kind of focus on this population that is it does seem very underserved, where it's just yeah, I mean that time after birth for both I imagine for both mom and dad is Yeah, I just remember with dad, it's like, okay, so I have to fit this into work. I have to, help my wife, support her through this. And like you said, I have this new little thing, that little person depending on me for life. And yeah, so it's just a stressful time all around. It's cool that you're there to help people through that change and kind of support them with sleep and with just, being healthier mentally.
Absolutely. And, and there's been, just to kind of go on this quick tangent, but there's been so many more kind of research articles as far as like peer interventions, for like both dads and moms, post delivery. And so I'm also hoping that, here in the next, decade at least, we can get the word out as far as there's so many resources and increased support for families. So hopefully we can see those improvements here.
Mhm.
'Cause I think families really struggle postpartum.
Yeah. Okay. Good. And then, so just this kind of a general question, but what? I mean, we all know that sleep is helpful for us, but especially for kids, why is sleep so important for their overall growth and development?
Right.
Uh,
And I think you just hit like the nail on the head. I think that's the cliche. It's overall, right? Once you start working with a family and the kiddos are having that sustained sleep, right? It's especially honestly like all the age ranges, but one of like the coolest parts, right, is like your infants. All of a sudden, almost like within like the first few days, babies start to begin to hit those like developmental milestones that the families were like, why? Like, why aren't they like rolling yet? What? I'm doing all the things, we're doing all the practices. And then once they start having that like sustained sleep, like all of a sudden that baby, whatever, like I think those little synapses in its brain was just like waiting to have that opportunity to kind of like grow and connect. So overall, so many benefits as far as helping to improve sleep. So we've got development, we've got immunity purposes, right? Like as adults, we know if we are worn down, we're not sleeping, the odds that we are going to get sick are higher, right? Than if we were to be having a more sustained sleep. So immunity, behavior regulation, your school age kids, toddlers, preschoolers, if they are having more disruptive sleep, goodness, they're just hot little messes, kind of throughout the day. Cognition is improved with more sustained sleep. And that's, I think, really that applies for all of us, and no matter the age. So there's so many benefits, to having improved sleep for kiddos for sure.
Completely agree. Completely agree. Okay. So, all right. So for we've covered some. You provided some kind of actionable tips that people can think about when improving their kids' sleep. Do you have anything else that you would mention? Just kind of
Mhm.
general tips that are applicable to a lot of different ages and stages.
So I was trying to think of like just like one tip, right? And I struggle because kind of like we were talking earlier about sleep hygiene, there's no like secret sauce, right? And so it kind of just depends on like the family dynamic, family's goals, and what's going on with the kiddo. Um, uh, but one thing that I would love for parents to take away is just to allow for grace, and to wake up each day with like, like a fresh kind of attitude. Today's a fresh start. Last night may have been just a hot mess. The day before, the weeks before, months before, y'all may be struggling, but today is a fresh new day. And just to kind of like give yourself that permission to, feel frustrated with the past, but the past is the past. Today's new. And like moving forward, you can begin to create like those healthy sleep habits. We talked about consistency, we talked about routine. And one thing though we didn't talk about, and especially helpful of our school age kid, is to celebrate those small wins. Sometimes when you're in the thick of it, it's hard to see those small wins. And so that's another kind of like benefit of working with a sleep coach because, we are kind of removed from the situation. We are able to kind of get a good overview of what's going on and to help you identify, oh my goodness, your kiddo slept for 3 hours straight last night. And before, like it had been 6 months since they slept, that long. And so sometimes like it's helpful just to celebrate and give yourself kudos, give your child kudos for getting those like small wins, because I tell you what, those small wins do accumulate And then all of a sudden, your kiddo's sleeping 7 hours through the night. And then, sometimes I think too, like parents be like, "Oh," then I was waking up because I was like, are they okay? Should I go in and check? I think they're sleeping, but it's been 7 hours. So all of a sudden, before you know it, we've got those sustained sleep habits, and um, it's a win. So I don't have a secret one kind of amazing tip. It kind of just depends on the families, but for sure, just allow yourself grace and celebrate those successes, I think, are two big ones.
That is fantastic advice. And it's funny just listening. It's kind of fascinating listening to the parallels between adult sleep and pediatric sleep when it comes to coaching because we coach people on the same things. Like a lot of times when people are having, dealing with really bad sleep issues, they're hard on themselves. Like, why can't I just sleep? And they're just so hard on themselves. So I coach them on kind of self-compassion, kind of giving themselves that grace. And also, like you said, when you're in the thick of it, you might miss those small wins. So oh, maybe I woke one less time last night than usual or something like that. But when you can't see the forest through the trees, so you're so focused on the negative that you can't see those little positive nuggets in there. So okay, so there's a lot of similarities.
I think so too. And I think kind of stopping the spiral, right? Or, kind of like working through that and realizing that like today, maybe, today was not so great, but tomorrow will be better. Um, and we all have those days, right? Like even awesome sleepers.
Mhm.
Sometimes there's just a rough day, and that's okay. Just move on.
Okay, okay, we're on the same page. So glad to hear.
Absolutely. We just did the same book.
Exactly, exactly. Okay, so for parents out there who maybe they're struggling with their kids' sleep right now, they're kind of wondering where to turn. Like, what would you recommend they consider if they're thinking about working with a sleep coach, or what steps would you recommend that they go through if they are stuck in that stage where they're just they don't know where to turn next?
Absolutely. Well, I think, setting up like a free consultation via our website, and Seth, I know I told you earlier, but I love our website. Just going to sleepably.com. And then you can kind of visit. I think we've got quite a few resources on there too. But if you want to just set up like a free time to chat, we can do a 15-minute consultation and I can learn more about like what's going on with you, kind of things that you've tried, what's worked, what's not worked, and what your goals are. And then that way we can kind of set up like a personalized action plan and see if like sleep coaching is a good fit. Um, so I those are your that's your best bet.
Okay. And I'll echo that. I've heard from many people who've worked with Sarah, and they are all they've I've seen the transformation they've gone through where they were in this place where their kid was sleeping poorly, they were sleeping poorly, they're frustrated, and like we talked about, lack of couples time and everything. And so to watch them, where they're at now, they're all very seem just the relief is very palpable. You can see how relieved they are. So yeah, I would recommend just talking with Sarah and just seeing, giving her an idea of what's going on with you and seeing if she might be the right fit for you. But I think that's a great first step.
Absolutely. And then, too, big fan of, kind of community partnerships with like working with your pediatrician. You can always, reach out to your medical provider, your pediatrician, and just to make sure that we're ruling out any kind of like physical anomaly. Anytime, especially goodness right now, right? There's so many sick kids. And so making sure that we're not looking, is like ear pain, are we looking, any kind of like sleep obstruction or airway obstruction? Is that the cause of these, like, kind of sleep issues? Is it physical? Once physical has been ruled out, then absolutely. Let's see how I can help you. See how I can help everyone. Some sleep.
Good advice. Good advice. Okay, well, Sarah, I think that is all the questions I have for you today. Is there anything else you'd like to add? I think we covered a wide range of topics, but anything else you'd like to add before we sign off today?
Um, Probably just like working alongside you and Sleepily over the last 3 years has just been so rewarding and so much fun. And so I really appreciate like what we've done over the last few years. So
Same
thanks.
here. Same here. And the excited part is we're all going to keep helping more people and getting better at what we do. So it's all good from here.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much, Sarah. And yeah, look forward to seeing the other cool things that you keep doing going forward.